Hi guys, a little weird to talk, but I'll try to make up for it. So as Alice said, I work at the family. I've been there for the past 6 years, and most of my job is to do what I was just doing in the chat, which is answering to people's questions. And one of the very recurring topics is fundraising, of course. It's what people talk most about in the press, but it's also like an important milestone for entrepreneurs. Often it is the rhythm to which they execute. And so today I want to talk about the pitch deck. It's still something that people have to do, but don't worry, we won't do 20 minutes on just a pitch deck, which would be probably a boring subject, but mostly on what you need to convey through the pitch deck and what you need to put in the pitch deck. So as a lot of people say, a plan is better than having no plan. And the pitch deck has been said to be dead. No one likes it. Founders don't like to build it. Investors don't like to read them. But the truth is, the deck is always here. It's still live. And if you look at how founders raise, the best ones, they could raise money any documentation, but they build a deck. Build a deck because when you're fundraising, one thing that is very important is to not reinvent the wheel. You are already building an uncertain business, which is your startup. That doesn't mean you need to change the way people raise funds. And so the way people raise funds is they build a deck, they get to talk to investors in parallel, and they optimize the outcome. Every time a startup tries to do differently, they decide that they're going to write a memo. They're not going to do a video to pitch their startup. It ends up weirdly because investors are not willing to take the change and are not willing to lose time in something they don't understand. So the good thing is that doing a deck is actually going to help you. It's going to help you refine the story that you're telling. It's going to show the investors that you are the person that is in control of the timing, and it's also going to help you multiply the reach. It helps you multiply the reach because you might talk to 20 people a week, but they might send the deck to a number of times more people. So the deck, what is the deck? The first thing to understand is that the deck is not an extensive view of your company. The deck is just what you need to hook people for an initial interest. So you build the deck, you send it to people, they read it, and with what they read, they need to be willing to talk to you. They don't need enough information to decide to invest, but they need to have enough to be super interested and engage in a conversation. Once the conversation starts, then you get to tell the full story. It's a little bit like dating. On the first date, you're not saying everything to the other person. You're just saying enough to go to a second date. The second use case for the deck will be a cheat sheet. You're in the process of raising funds, you're going to talk to investors, and then these investors are going to have to convince their own partners. And while they might have a good memory, they probably don't remember everything you told them. They're seeing 10 companies per day. And so when the partner is going to ask, what's the retention rate of the they're going to deck, look at the numbers, and be able to answer without pinging you again. So for that, it will be very useful. But what the deck is not going to be, it's not going to be the support for you pitching orally. It's very, very difficult to pitch a cool story with someone if you are following the rules of a deck. So if you want to convey trust, conversations, it's going to be more like a conversation. And you need to imagine talking to a friend at a Starbucks. It actually happens like this. So once we know we need to create a deck, but what does the deck need to tell? The deck is basically the narrative. It's the story that you are telling. It needs to be your own story, not the story of another SaaS company, another marketplace. And you always need to keep in mind that the story needs to put you in a unique place and show how special you are to the investor. In a good story, so the deck is a good story. A good story always has the same elements. It has credit, hard work, vulnerability, duty, and gratitude. Credit would be to say, I got the opportunity to start building my company because of my amazing co-founder who had found this blah, blah, blah problem when he was working at UBS. Then we put up a lot of hours and a lot of hard work to create the first product. Vulnerability would be to say that it was most difficult when we lost our biggest client, but we powered through to get to the next milestone. Duty would be to say that you had a mission to help your customers get the best out of all the clients they have. So this is a noble mission that drives you every day. And gratitude is saying thank you to all the team members that you have and the great investors. And so you need to package all of this into a story that conveys trust, and it's going to help you build the right relationship with the investors. When it comes to being specific to fundraising, a good story should also convey 4 things: passion, determination, clarity, and vision. Passion, because this is the only thing that is going to push you to still be working when things are going to be hard. And building a startup is terribly difficult. It's going to be hard at times. And if you're driven by money, it probably won't be enough. You need to be driven by the fact that you want to help your clients. Determination, because this is the sign of the best entrepreneurs. It's relentless execution. It's a desire to always make things better. Clarity is explaining to people that you exactly know what is going to happen in the future, especially when it comes to fundraising, telling people what are the milestones you're going to reach in the next 3, 6, 9, 12, and 18 months is very, very important. And vision is your understanding of where the market is going and to show to investors that you know where the company is going to be 10 years from now. This is the unique proposition that you have, saying to people that everyone is going to have a computer at home when nobody believed it. Once you understand that this is the type of emotion that you want to bring through your pitch, you need to make it your own story, and you need to put that story on slides. The story is always a combination of the same type of elements: the customer problem you're solving, the solution that you offer, the market size, the unit economics, projections, go-to-market, etc. All these things need to be your own story. It's what your business has to prove for it to become really good. And you always see templates of how to do a pitch deck. And it's always customer problem, solution, team, and they're always in the same order. And every time I see a startup sending me a deck that is in that exact order, I feel like they've not customized it for their own story. Elon Musk would probably not be pitching Tesla, starting with electric cars might be the future, gasoline is getting expensive, blah, blah, blah. He's probably going to start his pitch deck with, my name is Elon Musk, I created PayPal, I sold it for $1 billion, I'm now putting all my money into a new project, it's called Tesla. That's probably the best way for him to hook people and to have them listen afterwards. So your story should be the same. Start with something that is like important enough to grab people's attention, and then demonstrate that you have a business that is good. We're going to go through all of these, not all of these, like some of these, because I want to give some like perspective on what making it personal means. The first slide that we often see is called the problem. I prefer to call it the customer problem, because then you can identify the persona with more precision. Often I see people that are saying like there is a problem in the market, but the market can be very, very vague. And it takes a lot of time for me as an investor what the solution is, to identify the people. It might be a niche, but that's okay. Then you need to explain how big the problem is for them. It doesn't mean it's a big problem in terms of market size, but it means that as of today, customers need to go through very long processes to do exactly what your solution does. And then the third thing you want to show is that your solution, that the problem you've identified is not a tiny problem for a few people. It's actually a repeatable problem. The other slide that I often dislike when I read companies is unit economics. I find that very few people have an understanding of what actually drives their business. Unit economics is how much it costs to sell something and how much you sell it for. And so depending on the business that you are starting, it could be what a transaction looks like. If you're selling shoes on an e-commerce, then you have the cost of goods sold, probably 30 euros, the cost of logistics, 10 euros, the cost of marketing, 20 euros, the cost of packaging, 1 euro, and then 28 euro margin. That type of analysis you should do whatever business you're in, because investors like to think in like to start small and think big afterwards. It's like when you talk about market size, saying you're going to get 1% of a 100 billion market is very, very abstract. Saying that you're going to get one client that pays 100K per year and that there are 1,000 clients like this, which would bring you to 100 million in revenue, is much easier to imagine for an investor. And so do it for B2C businesses, do it for B2B businesses, and put these in numbers. The numbers are going to be how much money you're making today, how much it costs you to get those clients, and put them in perspective with trends. Is the margin going to grow? Are the cost of acquisition going to go down? Are they going to go up? These are going to be able to show that you have a vision of where the market is going. For each of these slides, I want you to remember that you need to show that you have clarity, vision, determination, passion, and that the timing is right. You want to show ambition, you want to show all of these things in each of the slides. Don't wait for market size to say that the market is big. When it comes to the team, often we just see the names of the people and which schools they went to. And although social proof is important, investors are not buying resumes. Investors are buying passion and determination. They need to understand why you are the right team for that exact problem. And often they say that smart people tackle smart problems, and there are startups that can't be built by people that are too smart. Like Elon Musk is doing electric cars and rockets. He would probably be terrible at doing e-commerce. So show that you have the right aptitude and the right skills for the business you're in. Also sell the team you're working with. It's you, but it's also the people that you bring on the mission. And there comes culture. Culture is as important as everything else. If you manage to build a company in which everyone shares the vision and the determination that you have, investors are going to be super impressed. And you can convey this through number of people that you hired, the low disengagement rate for employees that you have, the extra mile that your employees are doing. And these can be things that you put in the deck. They are actually much more important than just saying that you went to Harvard or Stanford. I'm going to talk a bit about the section about, I'm going to talk a bit about Traction 2. Usama mentioned Traction many times before as the #1 reason for investors to invest in a company. I 100% agree. But Traction is important because it shows that the story you're telling is true. Usually you're saying that customers have a problem, your solution works, and it's going to grow. This needs to be proved with actual numbers. And cash is always king. If you're making dollars from the product you're having, it's an absolute proof that people are using it. If it's usage, that works too. But every time you show metrics, you need to show that they're growing and that they're growing faster and faster. And remember that the metrics tell a story. The number of active users, if you want to show that your users have high retention, you need to define what an active user is. And maybe it's better for you to say that that an active user is someone that used your service twice. Then you have very few users, but these users are very engaged and they're not, you're not losing them over time. Then you can build up a story that says, I have super high retentions for people that have used my service twice, and I'm going to look for more people. I want to use it 2 times, which is exactly what people like Facebook did. They knew that if you added 10 friends, did 2 likes, and sent 1 message, you would stay for life. And that was the entire pitch they were having. And the third thing about traction that is immensely important is to show that you have momentum. Investors want to understand why you're fundraising now, not why you're fundraising. And you're not fundraising because you need the money. You're fundraising because the market is so hot that your clients want your solution and you exactly know what you're going to do with the money. Momentum is really explaining that things have changed in the past 2-3 months. Clients have started to understand the problem you're trying to solve. The product is finally ready, and you're seeing engagement go through the roof. The cost of acquisition has dropped below the LTV for the first time. These are very important proof points that investors need to hurry, and that growth is going to be super high after they invest. Another very important slide is go-to-market. Go-to-market is basically how you find your clients. It's the number 1 reason investors are going to trust you about the future. If you're convincing about the go-to-market, invest a lot of money. As Usama said, investors don't like risk. They don't like to take market risk, they don't like to take team risk, and they don't like to take product risk. But usually, they will trust people to build the right product if they have the right clients. So go-to-market is very, very important. If you want to show us, and often slides about go-to-market are terribly done. They say that you do outbound emails, conversion with phone calls, then closing with account executives, etc., which is what everyone says about their startups. You need to show investors that you understand what growth driven by a better product. Is your growth driven by marketing? Is your growth driven by sales? And if it's driven by one of these, then you need to go into the specifics. Who is the exact persona that you're targeting? If you're doing sales, it's better to understand that CMOs of companies that have more than 150 people and that work in the retail industry are very receptive to your pitch. That's specific enough for people to trust that you're going to actually deliver. And be super specific on the sub-markets. That means exactly what I said before, targeting CMOs and special companies in a special industry or a special geography, and then show the progression. You're going to go from this to the next stage, to the next sub-market, and this is going to bring you to a company that does multiple times more revenue in 12, 18 months. Now, let's talk just a little bit about what the deck creation process is. Often I see founders try to change what's inside, and then they ask whether it's good. First, it's a terrible process for me as someone that wants to help build a better deck, because I'm worried that if I tell you to change something, a lot of work to throw away. And second, because I can feel that the story is not yours. So what I recommend is starting from a blank page and writing your story with one line per slide. It should tell a good story if you read it. Then you check if you covered most of the important topics. So team, go-to-market, finances, etc. And then you repeat and you read the story again. This can take hours and hours, but is the frame for a good story. Then you create the first version of the deck that you put on slides, and you add everything that is impressive about it, like all the details about your go-to-market or your finances or your product. The second step, the last step, is going to be to trim every slide down. You need to ask yourself, what do I prove? Is this number important? So do I prove determination, passion, speed, momentum, all these things? So remember, the deck is just a conversation starter. You don't need to put everything. And by the end of this process, you might have an ugly deck, but you can get a deck that looks like the one Uber and Dropbox did first. I mentioned these two because it's two decks that I actually like, and I'm going to show you one. This is one slide of the deck of Uber. It's much uglier than every deck you see today, but it's very concise. And if a founder comes to me with a deck that I can read in 15 minutes that has all the key points that I like and is in this design, I think he has done a great job. And then, of course, let's come to a few basics. The deck is showing who you are, and investors are investing in you more than your business. If you're doing the very ugly deck that Uber did, it shows that you're pragmatic, efficient, and that you don't care too much about design, which might be okay. It needs to reflect what your company is doing. If you were to sell a consumer product on the internet, having a deck like this would be a terrible sign. If you were doing software, it might be fine. If you're doing Uber, it was fine. So don't over-invest in design. Remember, it needs to be coherent with the story you're telling as a business. And the last thing that I want to mention is that credibility is a killer for startups. I always see decks that say trusted by this or this accelerator, having this grant from the government, having the McKinsey study that says the market is growing. All these things are not what makes you fundraise. You need to fundraise on your own to prove that the team has everything they need in their hands to actually succeed. As a little conclusion, I want to say that nobody really reads decks, but everybody still wants them. They want them for the reason I told you before, which is a cheat sheet plus the first way to see who you are. And I want to tell you one thing. Investors don't like to work, and they don't like to work before they met you. And so, because there are many reasons why they might not be interested in working with someone like you, and they don't want to put in the hours before actually knowing that. And the way I read a deck is I go to the product page and I see what they're trying to build. Then I try to go to the traction page to see whether the product actually exists, because I receive so many decks of people that have just an idea and nothing to prove, nothing to show for it. Once I've gone on the metrics, I try to see whether it's growing or whether it's still a few users. Then I go to the team. I go to the team to see exactly if they have the right competence for the business. If they're doing software, I want to see someone that does product, someone that is a CTO. If they're doing e-commerce, I probably want to look for someone that's really good at marketing, and depending on where they're selling, maybe someone good at logistics. Once I've got an idea of the product, an idea of the metrics, and an idea of the team, then I'm okay to go and dig deeper. And I do this reading a deck in probably under 2 minutes. And that's what most people do. So remember, the deck needs to be done, doesn't need to be perfect, and it needs to help people.
All right. Balthazar, can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
It's been super clear. Thank you very much. We've just had some little connection troubles sometimes, but we could understand pretty much everything. You are right now in Sicilia, right?
Yes, I'm in Sicily. I escaped for the confinement.
Doing good. You are right doing so. Okay, so while we are all testing the Sicilian Wi-Fi, maybe we could go through your questions if you have. We can keep 2 minutes for the questions, but again, Matthias did an amazing job answering everyone almost instantly. But if you have questions, it's a moment. There is one. Is it better to start business using investors or start single after procuring the desirable amount?
It's better to start building a business like a hobby. You start to build a product, you put it in the hands of people that might want to use it, and then you keep building with them.
All right.
I need to unshare my screen.
Yes, you can close your screen. Pitch deck always seemed a bit blurry and mystical to me before now. Thank you, Ludovic. So we should only send a pitch deck and a cheat sheet and nothing else? No business plan?
So the pitch deck is the cheat sheet. And when you send the pitch deck, I think another important thing that I haven't mentioned is to write a couple lines about how you want people to read the pitch deck. So I never send a pitch deck with just an email saying attaches the pitch deck. I want investors to start reading the pitch deck, having an idea of where I want them to go. So I'm always going to add a couple lines that say, hello, my name is blah, blah, blah. I'm building this. We've already achieved to sign a couple clients, attaches my deck for more details. You want them to be in the right mindset when they read the deck. Otherwise, they're just looking to, they're just, in most cases, when I receive a deck, I'm trying to figure out why it's a terrible business, that rather than understanding why it's an amazing business. Because I receive too many pitch decks that are bad, good pitch decks from bad companies. So if you want people to read it with the right mindset, you need to put them in the right mindset before they open the pitch deck. And a few lines will help much more than anything else. So a few lines, pitch deck, and then sometimes you need a business plan. But I'll talk probably more about it in the next presentation. But in the beginning, you need to start a conversation. You don't need people to know everything about your business. The business plan is for someone that is already convinced that you are the right guy, that you have a business that could be worth something, but they need to understand the details of the mechanic. They need to understand whether the economics actually make sense at scale. That's like for the longer term.
One of the founders should be the porte-parole, the one speaking, or should everybody pitch?
Definitely only one founder should be involved in fundraising, and it's actually very important. The first reason, it takes a lot of time. So you need to have someone work on the business when you're fundraising. The second reason is that it's emotionally draining. It takes a lot of work and effort to take no's every week or every day from investors. And you want to preserve your other co-founders from living the same emotional roller coaster, because you might come back, actually, if you can completely...
You freeze for me.
because otherwise you come back from a meeting, you say, I nailed it, and the next day you get a no, and your co-founder starts to distrust you. He doesn't understand what you told him. So it would be better if every week you said, okay, I met with 10 investors this week. We'll see next week what happens. And then you get yes and no, but don't give everything to them. And the third thing is, it's very difficult to build a trust relationship between one person and two person. You've never seen salespeople knock at your door with two people, except Témoin de Jehovah. So you want first to create this important bonds between you and the investor, and then he's going to ask to meet the rest of the team.
Knowing that raising funds takes months, and given that you said about why, given what you said about why we should be raising, when would be the appropriate moment to get in touch with VCs?
It's always a difficult question to understand when you should be fundraising. I think that the saying often says, you know when you have product market fit. And at one point, you start to see very clearly what you need to do in the future. And when you start to see it clearly, it means it's not something you haven't done before. It's repeating something that you already know works. You know that if you hire more engineers, you're going to get more clients. You know that if you get another salesperson, they will bring in 2 clients per month. This is repeatable execution. And that is when you know that you're ready to raise funds. Investors like predictability. They like to know exactly where you're going to be 12 months from now.
Oussem, I'm sharing with you a paper that Matthias wrote exactly about the when. We have so many questions. I think we should. Yes.
And as of timing, I'll tell you this. Fundraising can be very time consuming, and you can read everything on how long it takes. Some people are going to tell you it takes 9 months. People are going to tell you it takes 2 months. Our experience at the family helping a lot of entrepreneurs is that if the timing is right, it goes pretty fast. So if you're a very early stage company, it's more important to figure out it's better to wait until you have the right metrics and the right proof points to get money than to go on the fundraising for 6 or 9 months, especially because after 6 or 9 months, there is a very high likelihood that you end up with the worst investors.
All right. Okay. Maybe we can switch to the second part because we still have less than 20 minutes for the second part. Okay, let's go. Hey.